Good evening. It's time to begin our Wednesday night Bible study. We have a number of visitors with us coming into town, as we have a number of our own that have left town. So I think we probably are up more than we're down tonight. So before we get started, a few announcements. Reminder: new classes will start on December 7th. So not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday is when our quarter starts with new classes. Just want to mention, there will be a new adult class geared toward parents with kids between the ages of newborn to 5th grade. So parents of newborn to 5th grade. If you have any questions about that, see me or Paul Edinger. I can help with that. We are and it'll be meet in room 22, which is upstairs up here. And then the following quarter, we'll have another class for parents of older kids. So the younger parents this quarter, the older parents the next quarter. If you're available, Bags of Blessings for our hospice will be put together next Thursday, December 4th. Again, not tomorrow, but the following Thursday at 10 a.m. If you're interested in going to the Rock Hill Christmas Parade, we'll meet at the building at 5:45 on Friday, December the 5th, and walk to Oakland Avenue as we do each year. Walk over at 6. So the parade begins at 6:30, so make sure you bring chairs and blankets. So that's a week from Friday, the Christmas parade. The ladies' cookie and ornament exchange will be on Thursday, December 11th at 6:30. It says at Teresa Rowan's house, because I've been told I got to leave during that event. So baking for the youth for all will take place Saturday, December 13th from 10 to 12. Baked goods will be given to our Bob families and the Young at Heart members. Also, our congregational holiday luncheon will be following morning services on December the 14th. So please sign up for a dish on the bulletin board. And also don't forget to bring items for the food drive. Place them in the white box across from the bulletin board. Items are listed on the flyer on the bulletin board. So a lot of things going on as we're getting into, we haven't even had Thanksgiving yet. We have all these things going on in December. So make sure you keep your eye on the announcements, the daily email updates, and the bulletins each week as well. So again, let's get started as we begin, and Dane will be leading us in singing.
Our first song tonight is going to be number 332. It's convenient, will you please stand? I'll be singing the first and third verses. Let's sing. Here we are, frustrating pilgrims, here our path is often dim, but to cheer us on our journey, still we sing this wayside hymn. Yonder over the rolling river, where the shining mansions rise, soon will be our home forever, and the smile of the blessed giver gladens all our longing eyes. Here our souls are often fearful of the pilgrim's working foe, but the Lord is our defender, and He tells us we may go. Yonder over the rolling river, where the shining mansions rise, soon will be our home forever, and the smile of the blessed giver gladdens all our longing eyes. You may be seated. Our song before the Devo will be number 279. If you'd like to mark the song afterwards, that'll be number 569. Let's sing. Give me the Bible, star of gladness gleaming, to cheer the wanderer, long and tempest tossed. No storm can hide that radiance peaceful beaming, since Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Give me the Bible, holy message
It's good to see everyone here this evening. I know everyone's looking forward to friends and family getting together tomorrow for Thanksgiving. I have both my daughters in town and my 2 grandkids. And you know, it's sort of funny. The other day we were in the car, and I had a moment of clarity. Gray was in the back seat, the 4-year-old, and Maeve was in her car seat. She's 2. And they were just chattering away, and the radio was on. And, of course, now, before I was hearing challenged, but I got hearing aids, so now I can hear quite well. And it was a lot of noise. And I turned around to Gray and I said, let's have a moment of quietness. And he said, why? And I thought, you know what? If my mother was here and you asked her what my favorite phrase was, she'd have said it was why. And I had a moment of clarity then. I said, that's exactly what I sounded like 20 or 40 years ago, 60 years ago. That's another moment of clarity, if you know what I mean. Anyways, most of you know, probably over the next 6 months, our plans are to move to Tennessee to be with the kids and the grandkids. And part of getting ready to move, you go through all the stuff that you have and try to figure out what you don't need, what you just have to have, and what you can give away or what you can throw away. We had a huge library full of classroom books, full of commentaries, full of Bibles, and Beth decided it was going to be her task to go through all those books. And one of the books that she had gone through, and I saw the pile, and one of the books that she had set was on the top was one of David Farr's books. It's called Voices of Calvary. It was written 20 years ago. And I said, I started that book but never finished it. So I thought, I'm going to pick it up and finish it this time. Well, I did, and it's a tremendous book. If you don't have it, sorry, it's out of print. We may have some copies downstairs. David's saying he's got lots of copies. Come see me. No, if you, and just as a side note, one of the classes, the Sunday morning adult class in the small auditorium, we're going to use this study as part of our material for that class, Voices of Calvary. If you look on the back of the book, it says, the cry which broke through the surrounding darkness was the most startling of all words ever spoken. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? This emotional plea, along with other sayings around the cross, reaches out to us through the Voices of Calvary, and that's the title of this book. I thought tonight it would be appropriate to read actually a little bit of one of these chapters that David wrote. This is chapter 5 in the Voices of Calvary. And it's based around the section of scriptures where one of the thieves beside him speaks out and talks to Jesus. And this is not, David doesn't go into any kind of detail talking about the aspect of the salvation of the thief or anything like that, but he talks about, and you'll hear as I begin this, reading this, you'll hear what is very typical of his chapters in this book of all that he says about those. And it's not just about Christ's words, but it's about some of the other people that were around the cross at the time of his crucifixion. But this is chapter 5, the word of supplication, Lord, remember me. This comes from Luke chapter 23. 3 crosses stood on Golgotha. On one, a man was dying in sin. For him, there was no word of hope. Jesus makes no exceptions when he says those who are in sin cannot go to be with him. On another cross was a man who in the presence of Jesus died to sin. He was going with Jesus into paradise. On the center cross was the Savior. He was dying for sin. One was the cross of rebellion, another was the cross of repentance. On Christ, the cross of redemption. Wonderful indeed was the saving grace applied to the one. Sobering is the reality that no hope was named for the other. No background is provided regarding the 2 crucified with Jesus. They are introduced simply as malefactors, evil workers, criminals who were led with him to be put to death. Matthew and Mark describe them as thieves or robbers. It has been conjectured that they were not actually robbers in the usual sense of the word, but members of a Jewish underground seeking to overthrow Roman rule. It is noteworthy that Barnabas, who had been released instead of Jesus, had been guilty of sedition against the kingdom, murder, but was likewise described as a robber. Mark tells us that. Barabbas had been jailed with them that had made insurrection with him. It is possible that these two were part of the Barabbas gang, that they were now dying beside the very one who was hanged in that infamous murderer's place. Perhaps the soldiers had placed Jesus in the center because that was where Barabbas' cross should have stood. Whatever their offenses, by the honest admission of the one, they had done the things worthy of death. And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. A few hours before, Jesus had recalled the prophecy of Isaiah 53 that he would be numbered with the transgressors. To the uninformed, and certainly to his tormentors, here were three felons, all deserving of death. In a very obvious sense, his enemies treated him as a sinner. It may be that the arrangement of putting Jesus in the middle, with one on the right hand and the other on the left, was intended to portray that all three were of the same lawless class. What must be appreciated more, however, is that in his loving grace and his being offered in our place, it was also God's plan that he be treated as a sinner. And being the iniquity of us all, Isaiah 53, verse 6, for he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made righteous of God in him. You know, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And we spend a lot of time during that time enjoying each other's company, being thankful, hopefully, for the many things that we have, the many blessings that God has given us. But one thing that we always need to be considerate of and thinking about is the inexpressible gift that God has given all of us in the salvation that's in his Son. And so tomorrow, as we are thankful for Thanksgiving, may we never forget the greatest gift, the greatest thing that we should be thankful for, and that's of Jesus going to the cross for each of us. As we close the time period for our devotion this morning and go to our respective classes, we always want to provide the opportunity for anybody that would like prayers of the congregation or somebody who wants to put on Christ in baptism, that this, at the time of the song, have an opportunity to do that. So if you, as we stand and sing, if you'd like for us to consider that, please come forward at this time.
Art thou gentle voice of Jesus, fallen tenderly upon your ear? Sweetest cry of love and pity calleth, turn and listen, stay and hear. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. In his loving tender voice obeying, bear his yoke, his burden take. Find the yoke his hand is on you laying, light and easy for his sake. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's rest. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us all be here tonight, and that we retain everything that we've learned in this lesson, and that we will retain everything that we learned in our upcoming class. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, for those who were here last Wednesday, you know, Chance said he was wrapping up the Bible and archaeology series that he's been doing. So if for those who are visiting, we have quite a few visitors today. Chance, our normal preacher and our Wednesday night Bible class teacher, he's in Chattanooga with Tara's family for Thanksgiving. He will be back before Sunday, so he'll be back with us Sunday. But he said last week, and so over the last quarter, he's been doing a series on Bible and archaeology. And if you didn't know, Chance's college degree is in ancient civilization, so he's able to get into a lot of detail that more so. So if you're interested in going online at our YouTube channel, you can go and look at the Bible and archaeology series that Chance has done. So when Chance was going, I told him, I said, there's a few things that have come to my mind during his series. So I said, all right, Chance, if you're gone, I'm going to continue it one more Wednesday. So tonight I want to have some comments on some things to add to what Chance has said. But I'm calling this, Bible and archaeology, sort of. So I'm not getting into the as much of the detail and the scientific part of the archaeology that he's done. It's been very interesting. Again, if you have an interest in that, I'd recommend going. I think it's been a very interesting series as we see the archaeological evidences that validate the things we read about in the Bible. But one of the things that I've thought about as we've gone through the lessons over the last quarter, how do we react to archaeology or really any evidence? As you think about the Bible and archaeology is really part of Christian evidences or apologetics. It's evidences, it's apologetics. How do we reasoning for our faith? So when you see a new evidence or somebody comes to you with evidence or you read something online, here's this latest find that validates the Bible. What are your potential reactions to that? Read it. Okay. And then once you read it, how do you react? What's that? Told you so. All right, that would be the first one. When we'll see something, and I would say all of what Chance has covered in the last quarter, when we get a story like that, we say, yep. We look at that as validation of the biblical text and the principles, the actual text or some of the principles we read about. How else might we react?
Skepticism if it doesn't agree with the Bible.
All right, skepticism. If you ever seen an evidence and you go, I don't know about that one. So I'm going to kind of assume the first one we're kind of giving the benefit of the doubt to it being true. The second one we're giving, you're going to have to prove it to me. Why is it appropriate to be skeptical of things that are out there? Yeah, we're supposed to test what was said about the Bereans. They searched the scripture. Now that was about the scripture, but as we look at evidences, we need to investigate. One of the things I've seen sometimes Christians with good intentions grab hold of something that they hear to an argument or an evidence that is false because they want it to be true. What's the danger in that? Yeah, undermines that. If I say, look, A is true and B validates, is proof that A is true, and then B is found out to be false, what does that? Makes you question A, the original. So one of the things that really hinders the truth is a bad argument for the truth. Because if you undermine that argument, you kind of undermine, and you might have a truth, but well-intentioned or not, that can undermine the actual truth. So it's something that we have to be careful of. TJ?
Well, it reminds me of one of the History Channel did several series, and they tricked you to watch it. If you're a Christian or you believe in the Bible, you really want to watch this.
Yeah.
And then they try to use evidence to destroy you.
Yeah.
or what they would say is evidence.
Yeah. And that's something we have to be careful. So we need to, just because something, and we'll talk about some of these tonight, just because something would be wonderful if it was true, we want it to be true, we've got to be careful that we don't take things at face value. And obviously one of the things that Chance did in the archaeology is, all right, here's the evidences, here's why, here's the background, here's all that. What's a third way we may react?
I think one thing is that this is where we get all the denominations. Each denomination feeds off of something in order to make it unique unto itself.
Yeah,
Instead
you
of just
latch on to a teaching and come up with their own version. What's a third way we may react when we get deny it? Well, I would say that's kind of skepticism. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, and we need to accept it's okay to say, I don't know. That doesn't impact our faith. It's better to say, I don't know, than, especially number one, when it may be something that needs to be number two. So when we see proofs, when we see archaeological evidence or other evidence in part of apologetics or whatever, this is the way I came down as, all right, yeah, that's great. That really reinforces my faith. Or wait a minute, I need to be skeptical of this because I don't want to follow a bad lead. Or you know what? It's okay to say I don't know. And so tonight I'm going to go through some things, and I want to ask you to think about which of these three should be your reaction. So a little bit of training in critical thinking maybe, I don't know. But just again, something that came. So as we go through some of these evidences, not exactly archaeology, that's where the sort of comes from. All right, well, it's been a long time since we've done some of the Apologetics Press stuff. So I am going to start off with the evolution timeline, dinosaurs and man. Dinosaurs are the poster child of the evolutionary timeline. And underlining that is man and dinosaurs did not coexist together because that timeline just throws things off from an evolutionary standpoint, because from an evolutionary standpoint, man have been around this many years and dinosaurs are way back then. So I wanted to hit a few things related to that. Some of this may be old hat to some of you, and others you may not have seen before. But let me ask you this. If man and dinosaurs were together at the same time, what would you expect to see? What would be the proof?
Skeletal proof in the same strata of dirt.
Okay. Generally, so you would look for some physical things. What else
there
might
wouldn't be any man because the dinosaurs would eat them all.
you would look for? Think about non-dinosaurs. If you're looking for proof of something existed now, if you're looking at proof of somebody lived 200 years ago or 100 years ago, what are you looking for? Pictures, or and evidence and stories. You know, people that saw. So, do we have those kind of things for dinosaurs? Are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible?
Perhaps.
Yeah, Job has some that sure sounds like dinosaurs. Of course, the word's not used because dinosaurs it's really only been about 200 years ago that they started finding these fossilized things. But you do find things like, all right, well, here's an evidence. This is a cave painting drawing in Utah. So you see that, what's your immediate reaction? Hey, that's a thumbs up. I don't know about that, or kind of in the middle. I don't know. That look like a dinosaur? Yeah. Well, this is one where the people that have looked at it says, you know what? This is from, I think, around 1,000 years ago, the Southwest. Sure looks like the patina, the covering, all that. Now, from a secular standpoint, the things I've read about it, it's an overlapping of two drawings, and it just kind of coincidence that it looks like a dinosaur. What's the reasoning given that it can't be a dinosaur? Because we know they didn't exist at the same time, so therefore it couldn't have been there. But you notice they got the dinosaur, and there's actually a thing of a man there. Anybody seen this one before? This is in southwestern Utah. How about that one? What's that a picture of? What's that? If you show that to Charlie, a 7-year-old first grader, what's he going to say that is? Sure looks like a stegosaurus. Now, some say, well, the head's a little bit different shape or whatever. But this is a relief that's in one of those temples that's in the jungle of Cambodia and Vietnam, those things that are I forget the exact name of this one. But this is carving along with a bunch of other animals. And what do you think the reaction of that one is? You know, from a secular standpoint, you get the same, well, we know it's not a stegosaurus because they didn't live at the same time. It's a wild pig standing in front of palm fronds. Literally, that's what some would say. Or we know it's something else because that's just something else behind it, and it's a picture of something else. But again, what's our reaction? All right, again, the people that have studied it, all right, I think this one's about 800 years old. I think from the 1200s or so, something like that. TJ?
There's one other alternative you haven't suggested.
What's that?
Especially in Utah, that they found some of the bones and, just put two and two together and said this is probably what the animal might have looked like.
Yeah, and it's possible, although, people started digging up bones a few hundred years after the people that did these things lived. So somebody may say that, and, people started digging up bones. Interestingly, bones are of this type. That looks like a Apatosaurus or whatever. We used to call them brontosauruses when I was young, but then I think they changed the name and said that's not really a dinosaur. Anyway, they found Brontosaurus, Apatosaurus bones near here. So I guess theoretically, Indians dug up full skeleton and said, all right, we'll draw that. But again, there are things that are out there, and that our reaction can be, that sure looks like evidence. When I look at those, I'm in that number one category and says, all right, well, you're going to have to prove to me that something else happened, because what the obvious or the straightforward evolution is yeah.
Indians didn't predate Noah.
No.
So they couldn't have been alive then.
Well, there could have been dinosaurs.
Not alive after the flood.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Unless he had them on the ark?
Yeah. Juveniles. I mean, there's people that have done the studies, and soft tissue. All right, here's reports. T-Rex skeletons with soft tissue in them, soft blood cells and soft tissue. Skeptical? Number one, number two, or number three? Don't know. if you hadn't heard about this, it's valid. One of the, a professor at NC State, a scientist at NC State, roughly 15 years ago or so, they started, and there's soft tissue in dinosaur fossils. What's the problem with that?
Scientifically, DNA doesn't last that long.
Yeah, it doesn't last that long. Soft tissue doesn't last for millions of years. So what they've done is come out with theories, oh, well, here's a new type of fossilization which would enable this, that it could last for 20 million years or 100 million years. But this is scientific fact. Like I say, one of the scientists at NC State is one of that started seeing these. And, you know, secular, they're coming out with different answers. But it's caused some to say, all right, this doesn't, it really kind of messes up our view of fossilization. But it's something that we can see as an evidence and say, all right, well, at least calls into question the time. It definitely calls into question the timeline of fossils or fossilization that has been out there. So at a minimum, it underlines some of the credibility of the timelines.
Mike, one of the things that I find interesting is you can go into this with open mind and closed mind. The scientist is supposed to take the facts and just take it where it leads them.
Yeah.
But what they do is they already know where they wanted to go, so they try to prove it.
Yeah, read into it.
They dismiss everything that's not
Yeah.
in that window.
As their filters, they put on filters, and as opposed to reading everything. Now, can Christians be guilty of that?
First thing I thought of is,
Yeah, we got to be careful. Anybody seen these before? In Peru, Ica burial stones. What do you notice? So in Peru, the Ica Indians or whatever, they would put burial stones with different engravings in their tombs. And so these are some that people have found. What's your reaction to those?
pig standing in front of my man.
Artistic license.
What's that?
Artistic license.
Artistic license.
They look like rhinoceros.
You know, that one looks pretty much like a triceratops. Yeah, that sort of thing. That one definitely. And they found some, 1, 2, or 3.
I do know that from this particular instance with these Inca stones that they actually disproved some of the, what they thought of the appearance of some dinosaurs were.
Yeah.
And based off of these pictures, they changed the overall appearance
Yeah.
in order to correct it.
Yeah. This is one that probably ought to fall under that number 2 category. Because this demonstrates one of the facts. It is literally true that stones, Inca stones and burial stones, that is for a fact, and they have animals on them. Some of these may actually be original. But what happened, the guy that saw some of these, he said, this is interesting. So he started paying. Hey, can you bring me some more of them? And he started paying more for the ones that look like dinosaurs. So what do you think he got? Got more that look like dinosaurs. And so when people have tested it, said, you know, at least some of these are, you could tell, are new. They're not 1,000 years old. You know, they're fresh. You can see the cuts. So this is an example. Whether there are some that are original, I don't know. I'd be in 3 on that. But I do know that because of, I would say at best, the carelessness or of somebody who had good intentions maybe, I'm going to pay money for these stones that have engravings of dinosaurs on them. They supply and demand, what you're going to get. And so if there were any that were accurate, they just undermine the credibility, and you can't even, I don't think anybody even uses these anymore. And you know, it's talked about as more, well, some of these look like what we thought dinosaurs looked like. They found more skeletons. Wait a minute, it didn't actually look like that. But anyway, this is an example of having to be careful of some bad arguments. Again, maybe some were original, who knows? But we do know that it was undermined because it became a profit motive. Here's one that's interesting. I don't know if you can see. Okay, you can see the. This is Philip Bell, a grave in England in a cathedral from 1496, and that's the headstones. Again, which looks suspiciously like what? Kind of looks like two dinosaurs intertwined. Now, again, some have said, "Oh, this is some other creature or whatever," but it's interesting. Again, there's no doubt about the authenticity, the date, location. This is one that's just been in a cathedral for, over 500 years now. And, again, skeptics have said, that's something else. Obviously, people that want to look at that. So, again, that's one to be thinking about. How about this one? The missing day in Joshua has been proven scientifically. You may not read all that, but basically said a scientist working with NASA, they were running simulations of where position of planets and stars were going to be in the future and in the past. And in doing some things, the computer says, wait a minute, something's not right. There's a missing day where our numbers are off by a day from way in the past. And then one of them said, wait a minute, I went to Bible school as a kid. I remember there's something about a missing day in the Bible when you go back and read in Joshua about the missing day. Anybody heard of this before? 1, 2, or 3? 2. This was a Christian urban myth. If you've never heard that term, you can do that, and they call it Christian urban myths. And this was one. I saw it, it came across, now it's probably been 10 or 20 years ago. Really, when the internet first started churning, you would see a lot of things starting to be shared. And this is one that made its rounds probably about 20 years ago. It's a good sounding story. It's a story that as Christians we would like to be true. What the computer models at NASA have shown that, wait a minute, based on the alignment of stars and planets, and you look back, wait a minute, their position is off by a day. It sounds like a great story. It's something that was made up to be a great story. So we have to be something to be careful of. You start doing this, all right, see the Bible is true. Once that's disproven, now the credibility of the Bible is hampered because of that bad story. All right, this came up in one of the classes. I thought I'd dig into it a little bit more. Where is the Ark of the Covenant?
Washington, D.C.
1, 2, or 3? 1, 2, or 3? 3. Generally speaking, we don't know. If you hear a specific, where have you heard of the Ark of the Covenant being? Ethiopia, Sudan. Any specific story, what category, 1, 2, or 3? I would say 2. I'm going to be skeptical of that. So it's interesting. When's the last time we read about the Ark of the Covenant in the Bible? Yeah, in terms of the physical presence, Solomon is the last we know about it. Then we have multiple times the temple Jerusalem is ransacked, and all the treasures of the temple. When's the first time that happened? Anybody remember? What's that? No, that was the Babylonians. No, the Egyptians. 2 Chronicles 12:9 is when we read of the Egyptians. I think it was Necho, Pharaoh Necho came and plundered. It says, he plundered the treasures of the king's house, the treasures of the house of the Lord. He took everything, is what 2 Chronicles says. So this is where the stories of the ark being in North Africa come from. So, all right, well, if they ransacked the temple and took everything, then they would have taken the ark. Why would they have taken the ark? It's gold. You got a big old gold box or wood box with gold laying on it.
Did they believe in the power of it?
I don't know. the Philistines did after a period of time. But it's interesting. You remember when the temple, it went into ruin, and twice we read of it being restored and went in and just cleaned everything up. Who did that? No. Talk about before then. Josiah. He did and found the law. One other person did a big restoration of the temple. Hezekiah. So Hezekiah and Josiah both, hey, the temple has gone into ruin, and probably because since this time, and it says they went in and fixed everything up. No mention of the Ark of the Covenant in those stories of Hezekiah and Josiah cleaning everything up. Then when was it ransacked again? That's Babylon, 600 whatever. 2 Chronicles 36. It's actually three different passages. In verse 7 it says, some of the articles from the house of God. Verse 10, the costly articles from the house of the God. And then when they came back the last time, in verse 18, it says all of the treasures, all of the articles from the temple, they carried to Babylon and put in their temple. And then it's interesting in Ezra, when was the temple restored after that? Ezra. So in Ezra chapter 1, Cyrus did what? He sent them back with the treasures. And it's interesting in Ezra chapter 1, verse 7, it says he brought all the articles from the temple that came from, and in Ezra it lists, here's everything, and here's how many of this, here's how many of this, here's how many of this. And in Ezra it lists all those things that came from the temple. You know what's not in that list? Ark of the Covenant. It talks about the cups and the soul, different things. A list given. So that's kind of say, all right, something that seems to be gone by this point. So in the grand scheme of things, we don't know. But one verse that I stumbled on a couple years ago, one of those times when you read the Bible and you read, who knows how many times you read it, but then all of a sudden, wait a minute. I hadn't noticed that before. One of those for me was Jeremiah 3:16. And in this passage, Jeremiah is talking about, this is actually in the time of Josiah. He's prophesying about bad stuff that's going to happen. But then he said, but you're going to come back. So it's a prophecy before the fall of Jerusalem and Israel, Judah. But it's talking about the time that after that comes, you're going to come back and be restored. It says, then it shall come to pass when you are multiplied and increased in the land in those days, says the Lord, that they will say no more the ark of the covenant of the Lord. It shall not come to mind, nor shall they remember it, nor shall they visit it, nor shall it be made anymore. What does that sound like about the status of the Ark of the Covenant at that point? It's gone. When you say something's not going to be made anymore, kind of implies that it's gone. It's not going to be built again. So just from this is where we cross from just my opinion is, all right, this to me kind of indicates the Ark of the Covenant was destroyed. And it's not going to be made again, and you're not going to be thinking about it again. And it's interesting, we don't read in the Josiah, Hezekiah, the Ezra, and Nehemiah, those coming back. It really doesn't come up again.
Well, doesn't it say something about God's presence? Or the lack of? Yeah,
lack of. And then he also, I think this ties in with, all right, his presence is going to be with his people in another way. And this prophecy, as I was reading it and looking into it a little bit more, it seems to be about the restoration to Israel. But I was also wondering, wait a minute, or was it talking about the time of Christ and when all the people come together, and in that way, we don't need the Ark of the Covenant to have God's presence with us. We have God's presence through the Spirit. So, but anyway, I think this is the last, in the Bible, if you just do a search, this is the last time the Ark of the Covenant is mentioned. So this is after Solomon, when Solomon's the last time you read of the physical presence of it. And then this is the last time it's referenced in the Bible. We're doing on time. Okay. Relics. What's a relic? A piece. Pieces, parts. Religiously, what is a relic?
I always think of over here, they got parts or pieces of martyrs, of apostles, I mean.
Yeah, so in studying this, there are 3 levels of relics. There's pieces, parts, as Ralph was saying. So there are relics, and this is obviously big in the Catholic Church. Here's one of the saints. Here's their head, their skull. Here's the finger of St. Thomas. I think there's a finger of St. Thomas somewhere. And then the second level of a relic is something that saint or whoever touched, a part, a piece of their clothing. For Jesus, the thorns, the crown of thorns was supposed to be in the cathedral at Notre Dame, right? That would have been, since it was Christ, that would have been considered a first level relic. But second level relic is somebody's, and so you have pieces of cloth and different things like that. Then the third level is if one of them touched something else, then that third one becomes a relic. So within the Catholic Church, they venerate it. They say they don't worship them themselves, but they realize, hey, they appeal to the power of that, and that this can, be healed and different things like that. Do we have examples of relics in the Bible that have miraculous power?
Certainly, with the snakes.
Or that wasn't a relic.
Well, they worshipped it.
Yeah.
And got rid of because of it.
Yeah. But in terms of okay, touching the hem, that. Elisha's sash. What else about Elisha? It's bones. Remember, they were burying somebody, and all of a sudden it says some robbers or something close by. So they just looked for a tomb, and they put a dead body in. It was Elisha's tomb, and when the body touched Elisha's bones, he resurrected. We also see. That's one there. We also see in Acts 19 Paul's handkerchiefs. We read that God performed special miracles through Paul, and they would take Paul's handkerchiefs where Paul couldn't do it. They'd take his handkerchief and take it to somebody, and that would heal them. So that's kind of the premise of a relic. We do read about it in the Bible, but that idea is kind of carried on. So what's the most... I'm going to ask the question before I move it. What's the most famous relic of all out there? So, the Shroud of Turin, and this came up during one of the lessons, and I remember Chance saying he'd like to do more, probably have a full session on that. Shroud of Turin, what's your reaction? Number 1, number 2, or number 3 of earlier when you think of the Shroud of Turin? Now, does everybody know the Shroud of Turin? Supposedly, you can see the image that this is the burial cloth of Jesus. And the Shroud of Turin itself is like 18 feet long, so it's long that would have been folded underneath. So you have part of it is the front, and then part of it is the back. So in that 1, 2, or 3, what's your reaction when you hear the Shroud of Turin?
3.
What's that?
Mine's
3? 3, 2. Any ones?
I want to say 1.
Yeah. There are honest people that have all 3 of those. I'm in the number 3 camp. I know Chance has dug into this a lot, and there are people that have studied this and they've done their diligence and all the testing and said, hey, this really looks to be 2,000 years old and da-da-da-da-da. And there are people who have really dug into it scientifically and come away. They can't say it's for sure it's Jesus, but hey, it's from the right place, it's from the right time. Given, there's wounds on the hands, wounds on the feet, all the around the head, everything is sure looks like it could be Jesus, so they're in that one category. Others in the two category. If you get Apologetics Press, their Reason and Revelation series, they did a in-depth detail of the Shroud of Turin a couple months ago, and they came away in the number 2 camp. As they looked at it, they said, no, here's why, and here's a different time. This is a single cloth, and the Bible talks about a separate cloth around the head. Others would say, well, the cloth, they did have a separate around the head, but this would have been underneath it, different things like that. But this is one I think it's just fine to say, I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
That's exactly why does it matter? And that's why it's that number 3 saying I don't know is okay. It's not a test of our faith. It's not, you have to approve it. It's interesting, especially if you like old stuff, but it's something that we shouldn't make it a point of faith to believe it is or believe it isn't. It's a curiosity. Maybe one day, this is one of those things, it can never be proven that it is the burial cloth of Jesus. It can only be proven it was from the right time. It dates to the right time. The materials and everything is from the right area geographically, and the wounds and everything do look like somebody who may have been crucified. And you can get close to that, but then who knows?
But isn't that whole thing, it's much like when they make these crucifixes.
Yeah.
And when they make the statues of Jesus and Mary, it's just something to worship, just like they did with that pole.
Yeah.
With the snakes.
Yeah.
It's some, like,
it can be a stumbling block.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
My faith is just as strong whether I have that or not.
Yeah.
And if I had that, really it almost means I don't need to have faith.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like when Jesus told Thomas, yeah, you needed to see the wounds to believe. Blessed are those who haven't seen and still believe. And obviously the Shroud of Turin around Turin is, I don't know what the gross domestic product or the revenue that this brings into the area. That keeps it interesting as well. A few minutes left. What is the ultimate biblical archaeological find? It's in Kentucky. It floated. Anybody seen this picture before?
Yeah, actually, I just watched that last night on TV.
You
I did just see it.
Okay. So this is a formation in the mountains of Ararat. I think it said like 20 kilometers from the top of Mount Ararat. And so people have looked at that and said, you know what, that doesn't look natural, and it has kind of the outline of a huge boat and over thousands of years of, so let's start looking at that. What's your reaction to that? 1, 2, or 3? 2?
I think it depends on if you watch it like I did on TV, where they actually did a positive and a negative. It's just rock formation that just happened to look like a boat.
Yeah.
Is what. Because they did test the actual rock and everything. There's no
Yeah.
fried wood or anything.
As I was looking into it, they're going to do some more, and Don makes the point, well, from the Bible, it feels like the ark was more rectangular. Maybe it had a small bow or something on it, but that looks more like a traditional boat design. But, personally, I'm number 2 or number 3. Now, wouldn't it be cool if the ark was found? And now this is one where I think Christians can get trapped, because it would be really cool if they found the ark. Now, it doesn't impact my faith. It doesn't impact my faith whether they found it or not. But I think one of the reasons we think it would be cool, do you think it would impact some other people's faith? Especially skeptics, atheists, whatever. I think that's the cool part about it to us. We think, they found it. All these people who have been denying things, it would have to say, okay, wait a minute. So, but again, it shouldn't be to our faith, but this is one of those, I'm going to be a skeptic until somebody can prove otherwise. Now, this one related to the ark. Everybody heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Almost identical to Noah's Ark.
Yeah, and there are almost every culture, ancient culture, has some type of flood narrative. Does that strengthen your faith or make you skeptical? Sure. What is it from an atheistic standpoint? It shows you what filter are you looking through. From an atheist standpoint, what do they see of the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Everybody has a story, so yours is a fable like everybody else.
Yeah, everybody has their story. So, see, you're just one of any other one. What's the other side of that argument?
Why does everybody have
Why does everybody have one? And you know, and they are very similar. They're not identical. How do you explain the differences in the stories if they all come from the same one? The telephone game. That's exactly right. If all of us witnessed and even went through a tremendous event, and we moved to different parts of the country 100 years from now, and we shared with all the people we knew about this tremendous event that had happened, and 100 years from now, people that from different areas said, somebody told me, what do you think those stories would sound like? It'd be there would be the underlying similarities, but there would be differences. And, you know, so it wasn't a miraculous carrying over of the story of the flood, but the fact that pretty much every ancient culture has a flood story is kind of an underlying, so wait a minute, there's something to this that in and of itself, you know, but makes you say, all right, it's not coincidence that it happened.
Well, wasn't Gilgamesh was quite a bit before, was told, it's older than the story of Noah's Ark, from what I understand.
One of the reasons they have said that is because they don't believe that Moses wrote Genesis. So if you believe that there's a later writing of Genesis, then Gilgamesh happened first. But if you believe that Moses was the author of Genesis, all of a sudden that moves the authorship of the Bible back, and then they're much. So a lot of that is depending on where the source comes from. Howard?
Mike, you brought up the dragons, things like that a while ago. We have no idea what the impact of the flood actually was. The massive amount of water and pressure. I mean, it could have dissolved anything in its path. The weight, just the weight of the water itself. You know, this is where we get the petroleum that we have. It's from these animals killed or died. And we don't know, in God's massive plan of laying out programs, you know, it's difficult to question unless we go to the 39th chapter of Job. Start reading right there. And he makes a statement when he's talking to Job. I will question you.
Yeah.
Here, and you will answer me.
Yeah.
And then in the 39th, I think it's 38th verse, he talks about an animal.
40 and 41.
Yeah. And he talks about a specific animal, like, that don't sound like a dragon.
Yeah. I mentioned before, if you were, the evidence you would look for pictures and you look for stories. There aren't stories of dinosaurs. What are there stories about in every culture? Dragons. You know, dinosaurs, a new, powerful lizard or whatever the word means. Terrible lizard. That's a relatively recent word construct. But every culture has images and stories of some huge creatures that certainly sound like dinosaurs. Yeah.
Well, how does that come up with you on that 1, 2, and 3 in Job?
Yeah, to me, when I read Job, chapters, I believe it's 40 and 41, when I read that, it sounds like a description of what we would call dinosaur. Now, if you, in Bibles that somebody's written, they'll say footnote, it's probably a hippopotamus. and this is probably an alligator or crocodile. But the one on the hippopotamus, it says its tail is like a cedar. Well, you know, hippopotamus' tail is not like a cedar, you know, and different things like that. So, are there any of the, I think the bell's rung, is there any other favorite one of these that either you've heard that, you know, these evidences that,
Time back into the flood, the fine layer of sediment that goes throughout the whole world.
yeah,
I just gonna kind of bring it full circle in today's world with AI and the internet. It's all the more easy to get pulled into this stuff.
yeah. If you get to hear the comment, in today's world with the internet and especially with AI, we need to be on number 2 more and more.
Yeah, whenever you get to the bottom of things, everybody.
Free, you know, you can create the look of anything. So we need to be skeptical. And again, I'll close it with one of the things I started with. A bad argument for the truth does a lot of damage to the truth.
Yeah.
So we've got to be wise and observant and be like the Bereans. We're maybe not searching the scripture on some of these things, but we're saying, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. Let me do a little digging. But it is, especially with AI, you never know what you're going to see out there. All right, thank you for your time.